The world of marketing and PR has turned into quite the frenzy, and it's not easy to navigate the ever-changing landscape. Join me in my journey to learn from the best, as some of the world's top marketing and PR professionals share their stories on ways you can harness these changes to grow your brand. It's time to fuel the frenzy. Hello and welcome to the Fuel the Frenzy, our second podcast. And it's fantastic to be here today as I have a very special guest called Jonathan Chambers. Jonathan, welcome to the Fuel the Frenzy podcast. It's great to have you here.
I'm excited to be here, Sarah. Thanks.
You're very welcome. So Jonathan and I have known each other probably for about a year now. And we met when Jonathan was in a very exciting incubator co-working space down in Atlanta. And Jonathan has a great story to tell, a story about what his career has been in marketing and how it's evolved and what he's learned along the way. So we kind of want to share some of that today with our listeners. So Jonathan, why don't you just give us a little bit of background on yourself and kind of talk us through that marketing journey that you've had?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, Sarah. Thanks. As far back as I can remember being a kid, right, I've always been on the marketing side as far as being a consumer. And so I think at an early age, I realized that there's something beyond consuming marketing advertising, if you will, on TV or that I really attached myself to. And so, growing up, going to college and kind of always having an entrepreneurial spirit in the back of my mind really led me into some adventures, career and personal, that wrapped me into the whole idea of what it means to be a marketer. And I've been doing it for probably 10 or 15 years now or so, and I love it. It's great. It's an adventure. It changes every day.
I remember watching you, Jonathan, when we were down in Atlanta and you were organizing a very significant event, and I always felt that your communication style, written and verbal, is very in tune with that customer, the way you articulate your offering. And I was very impressed with some of the material that you put out there and actually what you organized. But before we kind of get to the more here and present, maybe take us back a little bit. I know you were working from home for a period of time, running your own company and running the marketing. And what did you learn in those 7 years of running your own business in terms of handling all that marketing?
Yeah, sure. So I was in college, and my dad was had a salary position as a director of a major program at that local university, and was responsible for millions of dollars in revenue every year. And I guess the entrepreneurial bug bit us both at the same time. And so we decided to just launch into the adventure. And it's interesting because that journey started with me kind of having a lot of the book smart of business and marketing, right, from the classroom at college. But then I had to learn very quickly, launching a company and never doing that before at 28. Wait a minute, I've got all this business and classroom smarts, but I don't have the street smarts that I need. So probably the first 3 years of us being in business was a very painful learning journey. And I say that very practically. What I mean is, from our social media strategy back in 2009 when, and that would have been Facebook's 5 years old. This is pre-Instagram. This is pre-Snapchat. This is pre-Pinterest. I think it was Facebook and Google Plus and Twitter. And so we had to learn very quickly, and me specifically, how in the world do we do this? How do we market day in and day out? Do we take an approach that uses a certain type of medium? What platform do we use? And so I think for a young entrepreneur that didn't have a lot of experience at the time, it was really life as a lab. I mean, I really learned as I went.
Life as a lab. I like that. Very great term. No, I mean, when you're 28 years of age and you're setting up your own business, there really aren't that many years you've established to actually, you haven't been in corporate for a long time, so you're learning a lot from scratch whilst you're dealing with the evolution of marketing.
Right.
And social media, as we all know, was a big game changer. So
yes.
So what are the challenges you think you faced at that time in terms of trying to reach your customer base?
Yeah, gosh, that's a good question. One of the biggest I can think of is getting to the point where we would understand our marketing as more than a brand message and bigger than that, right? It was more of a human connection. What I say, marketing is storytelling. And what I mean by that is, if you're going to if you're going to go beyond just giving a message about your brand and educating a potential customer, but you want to actually connect with them, right? And I kind of see 4 aspects or 4 whys of being a storyteller as a marketer. One, you have to be able to tell a compelling story. You've got to be able to captivate an audience. And once you captivate them, you've got to be able to build or create some kind of trust, right? And if they're going to actually spend money with me, and that's kind of the point of marketing, is to have a sale, then once I've built trust, then it's easier for them to actually hand me cash or make an exchange. And so it took us 3 or 4 years to understand that marketing was storytelling. We actually marketed to an audience that we misunderstood. Our mediums, the approaches we took were disconnected and disengaged from our audience. And unfortunately, if your marketing input is not correct, the output is going to reflect that. And so
understanding the customer, and even though that sounds like a very simple proposition, I think so often than not, it's very easy to kind of make assumptions of what we think our customer wants, rather than actually go find out what that customer wants and then create content or create those right communications to really appeal to their needs.
Well, so why we didn't go and ask or try to find out? Because it was too painful to get the answer.
Right.
And I think a lot of marketing people, CMOs, people who are getting even into the innovative technology side of marketing technology and data science, and I think it's easy to kind of miss the forest for the trees, right? Because you've got all this data and technology, and you forget that marketing is just like business. It's about people, right? Yeah. And if you forget the human element, then you've already lost before you started. And so I think for us, we were probably a little arrogant. You're proud of your own brand, and you don't want anybody to tell you that, especially a customer, to tell you that this is confusing and it doesn't solve any problems. And so we were forced after 3 or 4 years to really listen to our customers.
Listen to your customers. So critical.
It's cliche, but it's true.
But it is true. Because how can you give them what they want if you're not listening? So I'm sure you had lots of great experiences running your own company, and I'm sure there was lots of really good high points. But I know you've now moved on, and you're doing something very, very interesting right now. And I'd like you to share that with us. But I also like to understand, so how are you now, from the lessons that you've learned, how are you applying them now in this new role?
Yeah, that's good. Because, this is a decade, right? I mean, a decade worth of learning, just about. So right now, I'm responsible for an innovative co-working lab. And I can tell you more about that later if we have time. But I think one of the biggest things is, now that I understand that marketing is about storytelling, it's totally revolutionized the way I approach our brand marketing. And so down to the mediums that we use, down to which platform we choose to post from, down to the people that we spotlight and feature, down to the messaging. It's absolutely permeated everything we do. And so to get practical, instead of if you're talking about social media marketing, instead of posting a graphic or a quote, we may actually take a picture of a member in our space.
A real person.
An actual person. Imagine that.
Someone who's actually buying from you.
That's exactly right. Because, people connect to
definitely
to other people. They connect to stories. And for example, I had this thought this morning, but I think it's easy for us to get into scroll mode, especially on Instagram, right? Where you're just scrolling and you're kind of subconsciously liking things, right? Without thinking. And I do it as well.
We all do it.
But I think, do we tell a compelling enough story that causes people to pause their scroll, is what I say. It's a scroll pause. It's, well, wait a second, let me look at this for a second, because it catches somebody's eye, right? And I think right now in this economy, we're really asking people to pay a huge thing, and it's called attention. If somebody's going to pay me their attention, then I've got to take that time seriously and use it wisely. I've got to tell a good story.
I agree. So how do you think you took that leap forward to start to really understand the customer that you're appealing to right now with this new opportunity? What have you done? What have been some of those tactics you've implemented?
Yeah, sure. So we've heavily focused on storytelling as far as the human element. So we've spotlighted and featured potential members for our space. We've done almost mock interviews with people to say, tell us your story and why would you use the space? And so almost a highly interactive market survey instead of, hey, why don't we send an email survey? Let's not do that. Let's go in person and sit down with somebody and say, why would you use a space? And then be vulnerable and humble enough to be ready to receive their feedback. And I tell you, building feedback into our marketing strategy has been revolutionary as well. And that's something I learned from the last 10 years too. So,
That's so great, because again, it's feedback is important, but only good if you use it. And I
right.
think and I think it's when you're in a small organization, sometimes in some respects it's easier to kind of take that feedback and implement it. And I just know from some of my experience when I was working for some of the Fortune 1000 company, we would gather that feedback and then it would get lost and it wouldn't
Yeah.
get passed on because it was too difficult to pass it on.
Sure.
You literally can hear it, take it in, absorb it, and figure out what you can actually do from it.
Right. Well, and with what I'm building right now with these brands, I mean, we're building a collaboration space, right? And so in the spirit of collaboration, if you don't find out what the community wants and you don't listen to your potential members, well, then you've lost your collaboration. You haven't built anything. You've had a noisy story. You've sent a lot of mixed messages, and you've confused people to the point where you don't have a community.
Yeah.
And so I think it's crucial to listen.
Yeah. I think it sounds like as well that the space that you're promoting lends itself to that human element because you're there, people are coming in, you're living and breathing that day to day. But maybe, what advice might you give to somebody who actually doesn't have a physical space? They really are running an e-commerce business, for example, and finding out what their customers want can be difficult to do. Do you have any advice, Jonathan, on that, of how they might be able to go about and really ask those questions and gather that feedback?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it would seem to be a little bit more complicated or challenging to do that if you don't have a physical space or you're not in front of your customers, face to face every day. But I think there are quite a bit of tools that are out there that we can use, and I think really going backwards in the tools that we use. MailChimp is a great example of a company right out of Atlanta that, believe it or not, email marketing is one of the most effective ways.
Very
to market,
effective
right?
still. Even though we say we get too many email, it's effective.
But it works, and I think that's proof that using the things that work, even if they're ancient, right, in technology terms.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I think for a brand that's all digital or they're all online, they've got to build humanity into the way that they market. So storytelling. I've seen a lot of brands that refuse to put empathy, and I'll give you a practical example if it helps. So Twitter, there seems to be this more of a focus on strategy than there is on empathy. And what I mean by that is if somebody tweets at your brand or they mention you and that brand never retweets that or replies or doesn't reach out to that person in some way, then you've created basically a marketing strategy that says, well, you don't fit our strategy.
Yeah.
We're not going to give you any empathy, and you've kind of lost the human element. So I think there's ways to pepper in the humanity into the way we market as well as the message. And that's just one example. Yeah.
No, I like that. I think it's it's you're right. There's an engagement piece which has to happen, and that whole human to human piece can't be a human piece. It has to be human to human. So
Absolutely.
Even if you're, like you say, no physical kind of space per se, there's a means to still engage with your customer.
Absolutely.
So it's just like a conversation you'd have, if you weren't in social media. It's two-way.
That's right.
So
yeah.
No, that's very interesting. So I love the human-to-human connection, and I think it's been very, and I believe things are changing, but there was a point, even just a couple of years ago, where B2B would always say, well, the B2C model doesn't work for us because we're selling business to business. And I think we've all, and I know I hear it all the time, that we're now starting to tout, well, we're all consumers at the end of the day.
Right.
We're all humans. And so I think the B2B model is learning from the B2C model. And I love that. I love the fact that we are now trying to do much better with that human connection, however big that business is, even if you're selling to another business. Because even in that business, there are employees who are humans.
Right. Yeah, so, and B2B really is just, I mean, it's been the same for hundreds of years that business has been going on. B2B is based on relationships. Right? Yeah. And so you can have the most amazing digital strategy, marketing, branding, sales strategy. And if you don't treat people with respect, earn trust, create an environment for some true collaboration and feedback, you're not going to win B2B either.
No.
I mean, look at Coca-Cola. They're a product company, and branders would say, no, they're a branding company, and marketers may say, no, they're really a marketing company, but it's really just a human company. If people went away overnight, nobody's buying a Coke.
No.
Right? And that's
true.
That's another thing that we learned early on in that first business, that my dad and I ran was are we marketing to the right person? And it wasn't just not storytelling properly. It was, we don't even know our client. And so we marketed to the wrong person, and we misunderstood our brand at that point. So
yeah. And again, I think it's very easy. We see it a lot where people, companies come to us at Media Frenzy and they say, you know, we need to do social. Well, you know, yes, there needs to be some form of social, but where are your customers? Where do they spend time?
Right.
Yes, it's great to use Facebook sometimes in B2B from a company culture standpoint, but and I think you should do that. But do you really want to invest, you know, a large percentage of your time on Facebook when actually your customers are very active on LinkedIn?
That's an excellent point.
Yep. So proportioning your time based on where the needs are, where your customers are. We call it the watering pool. Is that what we call it? I think it's called the watering pool. Yeah, it is now. Where, you know, that's where the customers are. They're hanging around that watering pool. It's like you've got to go reach them at that place.
Yeah.
So
water cooler is
a water cooler, watering pool. We use a range of things at
thing.
Media Frenzy. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, exactly the same thing. So tell us a little bit about some of the you know, initiatives. And I know you've got a big challenge ahead of you right now, and I think you're making significant inroads. I see some of the email communications I said to you before, the way you articulate your emails and the way you communicate with your prospects, I think is very, very good.
Thank you.
But tell me some of the initiatives that you have planned for this co-working space, this tech co-working space that you're working on right now.
Yeah, sure. So it's a partnership out of, you know, my office, which is the Economic Development Office for Cherokee County, you know, North Metro Atlanta, basically. And yeah, I mean, it's really growing two brands at the same time, which I've never done before, and it's very challenging, but it's incredibly rewarding. And it's the same thing. And if you removed all the layers and the excitement, it's still based on building community. And so, yeah, one brand is called The Circuit, and it's a co-working innovation hub in Woodstock, Georgia.
Right.
And it's an amazing place for people to gather together. Either they have an early stage startup, they want to launch into a company, and we've got quite a bit of people that are working on a 9 to 5, but then they have a 5 to 9 side hustle or a moonlighting project that they're trying to do, and they need space, they need community, they need mentorship. And so The Circuit is kind of the first of its kind to do that. That marries a technical college with an economic development arm. It's pretty fascinating.
That sounds exciting.
It is. And then the second brand, apart from The Circuit, is called Fresh Start Cherokee. And that's essentially, you can think of The Circuit as the space, and Fresh Start Cherokee is more of the program, right? So this would be the opportunity for us to build out educational programming, workshops on social media or digital marketing, or a workshop on how to code, hackathons, opportunities for entrepreneurs and startups to really mix and learn soft skills and hard skills. Yeah.
So there's a lot going on in Cherokee. I mean, if the economic development team are really putting this focus, there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit obviously going on.
There is, and it's exciting to be a part of this team in this office, because that's just one arm of what we're doing, right? I mean, we're talking to industry, we're recruiting industry. The new Adidas Speed Factory, which is the first of its kind in the U.S. It's a robotics-run shoe manufacturing factory by Adidas, and they're actually working out of The Circuit as well until their factory is built. So there's a lot of exciting stuff. There's a lot of film stuff that's going on that people geek out about all over the place. That's going on. So, I mean, it's our view of entrepreneurship, right? And people get that confused. Why is economic development doing anything with entrepreneurship? And I guess the way I look at it is, you know, entrepreneurship fuels innovation.
It does.
And innovation fuels the economy. And so they're very closely linked. So it's definitely exciting.
But handling two brands, challenging.
It's very challenging. Yeah. I mean, when it's, you know, I have a great team and they help strategize and help me think through things and, you know, what's our voice, what's our tone of voice, what's our message. And so, it takes a whole team to kind of craft that story well. Yeah. But yeah, it is very challenging growing two brands at the same time. We need not recommended to everybody.
We need two Jonathans then.
Times
2 on everything.
I'd love to have another me. That would probably confuse my kids though.
That might confuse them. Dad, they wouldn't know who to turn to.
Yeah, get a lot of work done though.
That's true. Yeah. So it sounds really exciting, and I love the fact that you know, there's been, you know, that's what life's about. It's taking those lessons. It's making mistakes and then putting, you know, new practices in place, learning from it, and then implementing it. And I think you sound like you've got the customer at the heart of your strategy, your marketing communication strategy. And then surely nothing, you know, that's the way to start.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and it's easy to see when the customer's not in the center of the strategy, things can start to go wrong. and the messaging isn't aligned and the communications aren't aligned. So I think it sounds like you are off to a really great start with things.
Well, it's been a lot of mistakes and failures and learning and successes, and you just have to be willing to treat it like an experiment.
Yeah, that's really, really good. So why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about if they want to get hold of you, get in touch with you, how can they do that, Jonathan?
Sure. So right now, I mean, the best way is to go to our website, CherokeeGA.org, and then specifically FreshStartCherokee.com will bring them to our entrepreneurship section as we're kind of building out. The circuit's already built. We've already got our first couple companies in there, and so that's exciting. And one of our companies is a perfect example of collaboration. One of the companies inside of the circuit is a design and development agency that's building our website for the circuit. And so it's a pretty cool kind of see full circle, right, of a startup being in the space, and they're going to build something for us.
That's how it works.
Yep.
Yeah, everybody helps each other, and together you get there.
Yeah, and we'd love for people to come visit the space. I mean, it'd be a great opportunity, and who knows, maybe figure out ways to work more intentionally with Media Frenzy Global.
Yeah, well, that would be good. So
see the way to fuel the frenzy in Cherokee County.
We love to fuel the frenzy,
That's right.
And you're helping to fuel that frenzy now, and you're helping to educate our listeners, and that's really what this whole podcast is about. So I have to say thank you so much.
Absolutely.
You've helped me to learn a few things and remind myself of the importance of the customer.
Yeah.
So it's been a pleasure to have you here, and thank you to our listeners.